Is the world about to enter the end of the world prophecies? And what does the connection between the Abraham Accords and the Bible reveal? This is what the prophecies indicate about the future and the enormous ramifications they have for our world now. Join us as we unearth the secrets of the Accords and their possible correlation with biblical prophecies of global religious unity, the rise to power of a famous leader, and the quest for peace. Saudi Arabia has come up with a bold plan to make things better with Israel. People who know about the situation say that Saudi Arabia wants three things from the U.S. security guarantees, help with making a civilian nuclear program, and fewer limits on selling arms. If this new deal goes through, it could change the way politics work in the Middle East in a big way. The ambitious request gives President Biden a one-of-a-kind chance to work out an amazing deal that could change Israel's relationship with the most powerful Arab country. It would also let him build on the foundation built by the Abraham Accords during the Trump administration, which made it easier for Israel and other Arab countries like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco to make diplomatic progress. The Abraham Accords, signed in 2020 by Israel, have far-reaching consequences for end-of-the-world predictions and the pursuit of complete Middle Eastern peace. The Accords are noteworthy from a biblical standpoint because they connect different end-time prophecies. They represent a significant advancement in the region as Arab countries are eager to improve relations with Israel. This corresponds to the biblical concept of the sprouting of the fig tree and all trees described in Luke chapter 21 verses 29 and 30, which represents new life being breathed into the Middle East as neighboring Arab countries seek peace with Israel. Furthermore, the Accords are named after Abraham, a shared patriarch honored by Judaism and Islam. The link to the Abrahamic religions, which include Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, underscores the Accord's significance on a global religious level. It is crucial to note, however, that the name Abraham is often misused to create a sense of worldwide religious unity, particularly in the context of the Accords and the pursuit of Chrislam, which seeks to unite the three major religions into one world religion. The ramifications of the Accords go beyond religious unity. They seek complete peace in the Middle East, which has long been driven by conflicts and tensions. The Accords give chances for further collaboration and stability in the area through strengthening diplomatic and economic connections between Israel and Arab countries. Furthermore, as the Interreligious Center for Sustainable Development points out, the Accords play a role in combating climate change. This reflects the Accords' greater scope, which extends beyond political and religious conflicts to address critical global issues. This normalization deal would be the icing on the cake for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who sees it as the peak of his work to protect Israel from its biggest enemy, Iran. Analysts say that the deal would not only strengthen regional alliances, but it would also make the long-standing Palestinian problem less important. But leaders and experts in both the U.S. and the Middle East are still split on how likely this plan is to work. The tense relationship between President Biden and Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman makes it hard to take the plan seriously. It's interesting that the Saudi plan came out just hours before a separate deal brokered by China that made it possible for diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran to be reestablished after a 7-year break. Some experts see this deal as proof that Saudi Arabia doesn't trust the U.S. to protect its security as well as it used to. As a strategic hedge, this deal brings the kingdom closer to China and tries to end its long-running rivalry with Iran. This change could make the Biden administration feel more rushed to broker a deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel, but the immediate effects are still unclear and open to interpretation. There are many obstacles to a deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel that need to be overcome. The recent increase in violence between Israel and the Palestinians under the new right-wing government has produced an environment that is not favorable to a quick solution. The Saudi government has spoken out against Israeli acts, which makes it harder to make a deal right now. Analysts say that a major escalation, like a new Palestinian uprising, would make it impossible to reach a deal. Officials from Saudi Arabia have said that they can't have normal ties with Israel until there is a Palestinian state. This would mean formal diplomatic interactions, trade agreements, and probably travel agreements as well. But some insiders say that the Saudis, who have been building unofficial ties with Israel, might be ready to settle for less. The Wall Street Journal was the first to report on the talks about this issue. The situation is interesting for many reasons, as former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Martin Indyk, points out. Prime Minister Netanyahu wants this deal badly because he knows that he needs President Biden's help to make it work. This makes a unique situation where Biden has power over Netanyahu and can tell him to keep the situation in the West Bank and East Jerusalem from getting out of hand, because it would hurt the chances of reaching a good deal with Saudi Arabia. Also, President Biden thinks that full normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel is in the best interest of the U.S., especially as a way to counter the impact of Iran. The Biden administration has always said it wants to build on the diplomatic groundwork made by the Abraham Accords during the Trump administration. But there are more problems that need to be solved. U.S. officials have been worried about Saudi Arabia's domestic nuclear program for a long time because they think it could be used as a stepping stone to make nuclear weapons. In case Iran gets a nuclear weapon, Riyadh might try to get one of its own. Insiders who know about the talks say that if a security agreement is reached, its terms are unlikely to include a mutual defense guarantee like the ones that bind NATO countries. Even if President Biden were ready to agree to Prince Mohammed's terms, he would probably face strong opposition to Congress. Many Democrats have been pushing for worsening ties with Saudi Arabia, which makes it hard to get everyone on board with an agreement like this. Senator Christopher S. Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut and a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, says it's important to keep a separate relationship with Israel and a direct connection with Saudi Arabia. He criticizes the Saudi government's bad behavior over and over again, especially its participation in Yemen, which has killed civilians and made the humanitarian situation worse. Senator Murphy has asked for limits on how much the U.S. sells in arms to the kingdom, pointing out that any big arms deals should depend on how the kingdom treats the U.S., not just Israel. During his 2020 presidential campaign, President Biden promised to make Saudi Arabia an international pariah for its actions in the Yemen war and the killing of writer Jamal Khashoggi. Early in his time as president, he made public a secret intelligence report that said Prince Mohammed was responsible for Khashoggi's death. Saudi Arabia has made things worse between itself and the Biden administration by cutting back on oil production. This has hurt American consumers and may have helped the Russian military, which counts heavily on oil money. A spokesperson for the National Security Council said that the Biden administration didn't want to say anything directly about the ongoing diplomatic talks, but they do back closer ties between Israel and its Middle Eastern neighbors, including Saudi Arabia. The Israeli embassy in Washington hasn't said anything right away about the talks. But Prime Minister Netanyahu has said in the past that he wants to reach a political deal with Saudi Arabia. He has said that peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia would make it easier to reach a deal with the Palestinians. The Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. didn't say anything about the issue, but one Saudi official acknowledged the importance of the checklist and said that normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia depends on the creation of a Palestinian state. Two people who know about the situation say that Brett McGurk, the National Security Council's coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa, and Amos Hochstein, President Biden's top advisor on global energy problems, are leading the negotiations on behalf of the United States. Even though Prince Mohammed has been directly involved in the talks, Princess Rima bint Bandar Al Saud, who is the Saudi ambassador in Washington, has been more involved in recent talks. After telling U.S. and Israeli officials what they wanted, top Saudi officials started talking about their plans with policy experts in the U.S., such as members of the pro-Israel Washington Institute for Near East Policy. In October of the year before, members of the institute went to Riyadh and talked with Saudi leaders. The Saudi leaders were angry about what they thought was U.S. apathy for Saudi security issues. This unanticipated criticism occurred during a period of strained U.S.-Saudi relations, after a public dispute between Washington and Riyadh over the Saudi recommendation to reduce oil production by OPEC plus nations. President Biden, who had just been to Riyadh a few months before, was upset by the production cut and promised to look at the relationship between the two countries again. The production cut surprised and angered the Biden administration. Given how hard it is for the two countries to get along, the Saudi offer could be a rhetorical move, says Abul Adiz Al-Ghashian, a Saudi expert who studies his country's policy towards Israel. The goal may be to put President Biden in an awkward situation by not giving Israel an agreement it wants very much, and this could upset powerful Jewish American groups. Mr. Al-Ghashian doesn't think that Saudi officials would really help President Biden win a big foreign policy victory while he is still in office because they have a lot of problems with his government. An expert says that the people in charge of Saudi Arabia don't want President Biden to get credit for making things better between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Instead, they are happy for him to take the blame for it not being there. This shows how pragmatic Prince Mohammed is by showing that he is willing to break from standard rules to do what he thinks is best for his country. In an interview with The Atlantic, Prince Mohammed said that Saudi Arabia doesn't see Israel as an enemy, but as a possible partner. This shows that he is open to working with Israel. When the kingdom decided in July to give Israeli planes more access to Saudi airspace, it was seen as a big step that showed Saudi Arabia was ready to work with Israel. But the recent rise in violence in Israel, the continued building of settlements in the West Bank, and the Israeli government's plans to take more control over Palestinian areas have made it harder for things to get back to normal. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan has said that any peace deal with Israel must include the Palestinians because real peace in the region cannot be reached without addressing the problem of a Palestinian state. Even though the Saudi government can do some things to ignore what the people think, they can't do everything. The Washington Institute for Near East Policy did a study and found that 76% of Saudis didn't like the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia has more than 20 million people, so the government has less freedom to go against what the people want than smaller countries like Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates. Analysts say that Saudi leaders have little reason to try to make things normal in public when they can get what they want from Israel in secret, like sharing information and using advanced spyware. But what if everything does not go according to plan? Will there be end times? Some religious beliefs say that end-time predictions tell us about things that will happen in the future before the end of human history. Even though there are many ways to look at these predictions, there are a few main ideas that stand out. The thought of complete peace in the Middle East is an important part. Prophecies about the end of the world say that there will be a big peace deal or reunion between Israel and its Arab neighbors at some point. This is seen as a big step toward the Bible's predictions coming true. Some people think that the Abraham Accords, which aim to bring peace and normalize relations between Israel and Arab countries, is a step towards this prophesied peace. End of the world prophecies also talk about the rise of a one-world faith or a global religious unity. People think that the Accords, which could bring together Judaism, Islam, and Christianity into a single world faith called Chrislam, are in line with this prediction. Building places of worship for people of different religions together, like the Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi and the House of One in Berlin, is seen as a sign of this religious togetherness. Also, some readings of the prophecies about the end of the world say that a leader from the restored Roman Empire will rise to power. This leader, who is often called the Antichrist, is thought to have a lot of power and a key part of the events of the end of the world. People have wondered what the Accords have to do with this prophecy because it was said that such a leader could come from the European Union and be involved in the peace process. This was said in the context of the EU Parliament's participation in a European-led initiative. Overall, end-time predictions give people a framework for understanding and analyzing current events. Even though these prophecies can be interpreted and believed in different ways, some people see the Abraham Accords and what they might mean as important steps toward the fulfillment of these prophecies about peace in the Middle East, religious unity, and the rise of a strong leader. Thank you for watching. We hope this video has inspired you to delve deeper into the fascinating world of Bible prophecy. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking discussions.